Spreading the news.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.
Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win at the buzzer! Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. LeBron James with the rejection. Puts up a three. Won't go. Rebound box. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Ball Podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And we got a lot to talk about. See, my other computer, the laptop, excited about today's show. We got a lot to talk about, and we're going to talk about the first few games of the NBA playoffs, and obviously we're going to talk about the Knicks Hawks series, which I thought would be a lot more easier for the New York Knicks, but it's been a little bit difficult, and it's now tied at one apiece. But before we get into that, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're almost at 700 subscribers, so please subscribe below so we can get to 700 and then get to the race to 800 and hopefully 1,000 by in the near future. But some notes before we get into obviously the Knicks mini collapse versus the Atlanta Hawks. Billy Donovan has stepped down as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. He's obviously been in the news because of obviously the potential of going back to college, and he's always kind of been a name that's always circled around some big college jobs whenever they drop. Obviously previously last year with Kentucky, turned that down. This year I think he was potentially the leading candidate at one point for the job at North Carolina, which was open after the firing of Hubert Davis. And we're just waiting, and he didn't take the UNC job, and they obviously went with Mike Malone, former NBA champion head coach of the Denver Nuggets. He wound up taking the job, and Billy D they were expected he was going to be around. That's what management had said with Chicago, and that won't end up being the case anymore because he's no longer the head coach of Chicago Bulls. He was there for 6 years, and what's the craziest thing about Billy D in Chicago, he's the third longest tenured coach in Chicago Bulls history, which is kind of wild. You would think probably have some longer tenured coaches there, but Chicago hasn't, ever since the Jordan years, it hasn't been great. A little spurt with the Bulls, those Rose Bulls teams, but he went 226 and 252 in Chicago. So I think he's a good coach. I really do. I think he's actually done a way better job than the win-loss record shows, with the amount of the lack of talent he's had. I think everyone always goes back to those Lonzo Ball, DeRozan, years, a few years back, right after COVID, where things looked like they were really bright and it looked like the future was going to be good and they were in a good place and they could be a potential, they could be a representative of the Eastern Conference in the finals, or at least a conference finals, contender. And when Lonzo's knee just started deteriorating and he was out, kind of just ruined a lot of their momentum, and they just never recovered. A lot of bad deals, a lot of questionable draft picks, extensions, and led to where they're at now. And looking for taking a look for new GM, new head coach now. So it's the one job where if you get it right, man, you really have a hidden gem, and usually you don't say that with the NBA jobs. It's more of like a college thing you think about. But Chicago, the fans are always rocking in the United Center. It's just, it's like if the Knicks are good, or any team that has a high profile, it's better. The league is better when they're good, and the same thing with Chicago. So hopefully they can figure it out and get this thing rolling. So obviously they'll have to see who's going to be the next head coach. And who's going to get this team back in the right direction? It feels like management has really dropped the ball the last few years. So hopefully they figure it out and they get back to where, they were, in those Rose years where things were rocking. So Billy D out as the Bulls head coach. Wemby won the unanimous defensive player of the year. That wasn't really a shocker. He had a tremendous season. What he does, the impact he does sometimes you don't even see it on stat sheet. He's just that damn good of a defensive player. So Wemby won defensive player of the year. There were a bunch of tiebreakers in as far as with the draft. I know our Knicks won the tiebreaker, I think with the Lakers. I could be wrong. So they will get the 24th pick in the draft. So usually most times my guy, appreciate you. Yeah. I have an extra one. If I ever see you, bro, I got you. I got one left, one fresh. So I got you, bro. I got you. I got one. I actually found one that wasn't used and everything. I found one in one of my bins. I had one laying around. So if I ever see you, bro, I got you. Always love. So yeah, the Knicks will get the 24 pick. There are a bunch of different other tiebreakers that were. I think Utah is going to keep their pick. That was going to go to OKC. So a bunch of tiebreakers. I think the lottery. I forgot the exact date of the NBA lottery, but it's definitely going to be interesting. The lotteries. This might be one of the more anticipated lotteries that we've had in a couple of years. Obviously, this year was pretty anticipated with Dallas getting it, but this one, it could be a true game changer with the amount of players. We had a few players that we thought maybe would be top 20 picks, lottery picks. Braylon Mullins decided to go back to UConn, go back for his sophomore year. Hal's going back to Florida for his senior season. So a couple guys that maybe we thought. Patrick Ngamba, a guy first round potential. He's going back to Duke. So a lot of interesting names that we thought maybe would be first round picks going back to school. And I expect more names to be going because it's always been told that the 27 draft, 28 draft, the talent pool not as high as 25 and 26. So I think a lot of players are looking at that being like, hey, next year I could be a top 15, 20 pick. This year I could drop to the second just simply because of the amount of talent that's in the class. So I think guys making smart decisions, looking at their future, maybe with a better chance, with a bigger offensive role. I think Pat Ngamba is looking at that with maybe a higher impact role offensively. Next year, it showed more of his skills, his passing ability. Same thing with Howe. Same thing with Mullins, too. Mullins was pretty good. I think Mullins would have been a top 15, 20 pick. But, next year he could be a top 10 pick, top 5 pick. He's really talented. Obviously, hit the big shot against Duke in Elite Eight to send them to the Final Four and help them get to the national championship against Michigan. So some couple news and notes on that note. So let's get into it. The Atlanta Hawks tied the series up versus the New York Knicks. It is now 1-1 in a best of 7 series. And CJ McCollum was he was just he kept them in the game. And listen, throughout, you may not win the game in the first couple quarters, but you could certainly lose it. I think the Knicks, as good as they played and it felt like they were in control at times, they just let CJ McCollum just do a little bit too much. And that kept the Hawks in it. Like it kept them from being down 20 and being down 13 at some point in the game, being down 12. He kept them in the game. So that was huge for Atlanta, and he just kept chipping away and just hitting, timely buckets. And Kuminga showed what he can be, especially his ability to attack the basket and finish. That's the Kuminga we have been waiting to see. People have been waiting to see, and people in Golden State were just like hoping that, Kerr would unleash and, what he can do in transition and just finish, and his athleticism is exactly what kind of worried me. If there was worry, was Hawks are going to beat the Knicks, they're going to have to play fast. And that's what they kind of did. They played fast. And the defense really ramped up for Atlanta in the second half. They really made Jalen Brunson take some tough shots. Especially when there was, the stretches where there was no Towns or no Brunson. They really took advantage of those. And that was going to be the key for them to win, was transition points, not getting destroyed on the boards, and just playing and taking advantage of those minutes with no Brunson or no Towns. And they did that. They really took advantage. They did that. And that's what kept them in the game. And you would think with the Knicks, every starter had over 10 points. Mitch Robinson even put in 13, so you were in any case where all your starters are above in double digits and your sixth man has double, you should win the game. You should win the game, especially when Nickeil Walker-Alexander is 3 of 13 or 3 of 12 from the field. He's arguably their, one of their best scorers. He's not efficient. You should take care of business, but they didn't. And this is and one thing I would say is, and this is something that I've really worried about, was the lack of playmaking. And it felt like early in the season there was a lot of more ball movement with the Knicks, especially when they were playing Tyler Kolek. There was a lot of ball movement. He's their best playmaker. He doesn't play. And, and I get that you want vets to play. I get it. I completely get it. But the lack of ball movement at times, and this is not just a thing with Brunson. You see this when whoever has the ball, whoever's Deuce, Deuce hasn't there. Deuce 0 of 3, some bad turnover, a couple bad turnovers he had. One turnover he had that led to a fast break point. I don't know, he just didn't look great, and in that situation, I think I would have gave Tyler an opportunity to get some real minutes, get some impact minutes and play, and allow him to facilitate, put guys in the right spot, and be the playmaker that they desperately need. And I'm obviously a big proponent with Tyler. I'm a big Tyler Kolek guy. I think he should have played a lot more this season. He had that stretch where he was playing a lot and he was doing his thing. And then the minutes just deteriorated, and they get Alvarado. He plays a lot, then he doesn't. And I'm Alvarado's not, he's more of a, an energy guy, and they probably needed it when he came in. They already needed that little spark because Deuce wasn't really doing anything, Shamit, so I feel like I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see Kolek minutes unless it's a blowout or injuries happen. But I really wish Mike would give Kolek those minutes in the second quarter and let him rock out, put guys in spots. He's the best playmaker on the team. And personally, I don't even think it's close. And he's not getting the run. And I know defensively he's not great. I get it. I really do get it. But man, they need him. I think they need him to play. It's not, like I said, it's not going to happen. Deuce just hasn't really looked right ever since the injury. I don't know. It's just something needs to change, and I really would hope that Tyler would get more minutes, but not the case. And you just let CJ McCollum just get into his spots, and he's just doing whatever he wants. And it's CJ McCollum is has been a vastly underrated player for his whole career. I mean, he has 10 straight seasons or 11 straight seasons with 20 straight 20-plus point seasons. It was something like that. I think he hit the under this year, and I think it's rookie year. But I think everything between that, 20 points per game every year. And we let him kill us. We let him kill us. And it just shouldn't be the case. The defense sometimes looks like it's fixed. If you looked at, the first half, it was relatively good. And then the second half, a little leaky, and then we just forgot how to play basketball in the fourth quarter. And this should easily been the Towns series. He should just be the dominating. But what's frustrating about Cat, especially in the post, I think that's one of the most frustrating things. We know he can shoot, and the defense is what it is. I know Mike Brown said, when he wants to play defense, he could do it. I don't really think that's the case. I just think he's just not built to play defense. I think he's just a heavy foot player, with a big, upper body, and just doesn't have the lower body to be a good defensive player. And I've lived with that. I know people want him to be better. It's not going to happen. He's in year 11, 12. I've lived with the fact that Towns is never going to be a great defensive player, but his post moves suck. There was so many opportunities where he had, and he feels like he's working way too hard to work in the post. He's the biggest player on the court, and it's not even close. And he has to work way too hard. And it just feels like he's never developed that proper post game. And in a series like this, that should be the focal point. And you just saw a lot of post moves where you're just like, you didn't win that. And Anyako Khan was a solid defensive player, but he's 6'8". You should take advantage of it. You should take advantage of Jalen Johnson. If even you have situations where you have Dyson on switches or Nikhil on switches or even Muhammad Goe, you should take advantage of that. And just at times it frustrates me that his post game just isn't where it should be. And he was efficient, but only 12 shots. The fact that Josh Hart only had one less shot than him, I don't know. That isn't, and Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges. It's Mikal Bridges. That's all I gotta say. Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges is another one. Mikal Bridges. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. It's frustrating with Mikal at times. Mikal. Well, more. Everyone's going to revert back to the picks, and that's always going to get brought up. Especially every time we lose a game in the playoffs, it's always going to get brought up about the picks and with Brooklyn. He wasn't good to end the season. He really wasn't. Didn't shoot the three ball well. Shot under 30%. The last 10 games of the regular season or something like that. So he didn't shoot the three ball well, and there was that one possession where he, missed the three. I think Mitch got the rebound. That's just what Mikal Bridges is. And the fact that, he was the person with the ball in his hand at the end, when CJ McCollum misses both free throws, I have an opportunity. He gets the ball and, I just didn't feel confident I was going to go in, and it didn't. It was just a frustrating game. You just 3 of 10 from the field, just shot 33% from three. It's just frustrating. And his defense I thought it was okay. I didn't, it just a lot of possessions where CJ McCollum's getting the best of him. Like I said, CJ McCollum's a really good offensive player, but you would think with the height, and the height and length, thing there, you would. But just a frustrating loss. You're up 12 in the fourth quarter. You're up 13 in the third. You should really take care of business, but score 15 points in the fourth and just look lost offensively. They look lost offensively. And that's the thing is the offense at times could look really great. Even Brunson, he didn't have the greatest, efficiency game, shot 10 of 20 or 10 of 30, something like that. But he hits the big three there, and that's what he does. He hits clutch shots. That's why he was a clutch player of the year last year. I'm sure he'll be in the running again this year. But the lack of ball movement is what's going to hurt this team. What's going to hurt this team so much. We have the size advantage versus team. We just have the better players. Atlanta should be happy to be where they're at, especially after trading their franchise player, for the last 8 years in Trae Young. It should have been, a chance to, rebuild, reassess the team, see where we're going to go, where they're going to be at potentially in the future, because they still have good players, Nikhil Alexander, good player, they traded for Kuminga, maybe next year they can build. And, they came into the Garden. They weren't scared. Even game one, that was, for the most part, a good game until the Knicks, which just said, all right, we're the better team. They didn't do that this game. They didn't just say, we are the better team. And they never just punched them in the mouth where, when they got to 13, we can make this a 20-point lead. We know in the NBA, no lead is safe. Knicks didn't do that. So now you give Atlanta momentum. You give this team. You didn't want to do that. Don't give teams. Don't make these underdog teams that have nothing. Atlanta has nothing to lose. The Knicks have everything to lose. The Hawks are they're just happy to be there, and they came into the Garden, and they took one away from us. It seems like this happens way too much for the Knicks. Same thing that happened in game one of the Eastern Conference Finals last year with Indiana. It's very similar. You can't do that. This should have been 2-0 going back to Atlanta. If Atlanta wins game 3 or 4, cool. That's what happens. We all know the series don't start until the away team wins. And now it's a 1-1 series. Now it's a best of 5. So what are the Knicks going to do? How are they going to bounce back? Because Atlanta go. And listen, I know Atlanta could be low-key New York South. But now that Atlanta series is tied, Jelani and the Hoopers and all them cats, my guys, shout out to them boys. They're going to be there. They're going to be ready rocking in Atlanta. And the fans are going to be rocking because now there's a series. It might have been we might have seen a lot of Knicks fans. You still might see a lot of Knicks fans in Atlanta, especially that's probably a lot cheaper to go to Atlanta, and see a playoff game than it is to just go hop on the 2 train and go to the Garden. Ticket price is crazy, but you gave Atlanta momentum. Now, what are you going to do for game 3? The experiment thing, I don't think we need to see Alvarado, Deuce, Shamet getting a lot of minutes. I think one of those guys got to get cut from the rotation. And like I said, I really hope that Tyler gets some significant minutes because I think he can help just create for guys. Because sometimes it's just, especially those minutes where there's no Brunson, and you could play Brunson and Kolek together. Let Brunson throw some off ball, create. It felt like we saw that at the beginning of the year, and it felt like went back to what we saw with Tibbs as the coach. So no team is under more pressure than the Knicks right now. No team in the playoffs is under more pressure. So we'll see what happens. It's definitely, I was on the train going home. I was work. I went home and taking the 1 train back to the ferry. A lot of depressed Knicks fans. When it rains, it pours when the Knicks lose in a playoff game. And right now, it's obviously raining. It's raining hard. It's raining hard, and a lot of people are upset. But remember, it's a best of 7. It's just 1 loss. We didn't lose 4. We only lost 1 game. Got to bounce back. Tidy up the defense. In crunch situations, the offense needs to be more flowing. Operate some more pick and rolls. Let's get Cat in the post and figure out, that he needs to remember that he's 7 foot, 265, and let's take care of business and win game 3, and let's forget about what happened in game 2, the collapse, and get back to playing how Knicks basketball. But if we lose, I don't even know what happened if they lose, but tough loss, but it's just one loss. I think fans need to remember that. It's one loss. We don't need to go trading Brunson for – I saw one person say we should trade Jalen Brunson for Dante DiVincenzo, and I was like, oh, so you want to be a lottery team again. Okay, that makes sense. Let's not jump off the bridge. Let's chill. It sucks losing. Losing in the playoffs, it hurts just as much as losing, but you know how Knicks fans can react. I know it was a tough loss. We blew it, but reassess. Hopefully Mike Brown can figure out a better rotation. Play Kolek. Please play Kolek. Please. Hopefully Brunson's more efficient. More town shot. Only 12 shots. That just can't be the case. He needs to be in that 15 to 18 shot range. You can't have Josh Hart only having one less shot than him. That just can't happen, especially versus this team. Cannot happen. And Hart had some moments too, especially defensively. He had some good moments defensively, but OG only had 9 shots. Like sometimes it just doesn't make sense the way the offense is. And maybe that's a bigger picture thing. Maybe there's something there why there's just so much weirdness in the offense at times where Josh Hart is almost a second leading, shot maker on the team. That just shouldn't be the case. Just should not be. I know Mitch Robinson gets all his things in the restricted area, but he had more shots made than OG Anunoby. This just shouldn't be the case. So we tidy up. I expect to bounce back, but now you gave Atlanta hope. Don't give teams hope in the playoffs. Don't give teams hope. Do what the Cavs did to the Raptors. Just punch them in the mouth. Take care of business, because remember last year, when the Cavs got eliminated in Indiana, they lost both games at home. So they knew the importance of just taking care of business, and they took care of business. And the Raptors are frauds anyway. And I know now looking back, I wanted the Raptors, but you can control what you control. I think we would take care of business for the Raptors, but who knows? Sometimes the Knicks are just lackadaisical, and they just they play down to the opponents, and they just can't do that. You can't do it in the playoffs. Playoffs are different animal, and hopefully we bounce back and take care of business. But disappointing. It's definitely disappointing. But the series is not over. Series is not over, guys. So let's get back to and as I say that, Siri, pops up on my phone because I thought it was that Siri. But series is not over. Take care of business. Hopefully we come out of Atlanta, up in the series and back to the Garden. So but just tough loss, obviously, but let's hope that we take care of business in Atlanta, but like I mentioned, the Cavs took care of business versus the Raptors. They they're not messing around. They're not messing around at all. So they took care of business. They 115-105 win, over the Toronto Raptors. They should win this series. It should be a sweep or a gentleman's sweep. It just really shouldn't be a close series at all. They should take care of business. And Minnesota tied up series, versus the Denver Nuggets. A great performance by Ant-Man. Did his thing. 30 points. Just took over. Julius Randle chimed in with 24 points. So a good performance. And that series is going to be fun, man. That's going 7. That series is going 7. And it sucks because this is a first round series. This is a series you might want to see in the conference finals or at least in the semis. But this is going to be a fun series. I think it's going 7 games. You're just going to see back and forth between, between Jamal and Jokic and Ant-Man. It's just going to be a hella fun series. Jaden Daniels with some of the comments that none of the guys on Denver can defend. He had a solid game. And he always has a tough job defending, and he always does a great job. He's probably going to be an all-defensive team, one of the all-defensive teams most likely. But their bench did good. Minnesota's bench really, did their job. Naj Reid, Bones Highland, did their jobs. AU was solid. So, the bench is going to be important. Knicks, make sure you get your bench great, that series is going to be hella fun. So that's tied up along with the Knicks and Hawks. Pistons, Magic. The Magic, it's crazy. The Orlando Magic were getting absolutely scrutinized, everything with Pablo Banchero not having a great game, in the play-in. And then he shut a lot of people up, at least for a couple days, with the upset win over the Pistons. And the one thing I said about Detroit, yes, they had a tremendous season, right? Cade should be an all-NBA first-team player, obviously after appealing, because he missed some games because he got hurt by someone else. So he appealed, and I think he won the appeal, and he's going to be eligible to win awards. He'll be all deep, but it was always okay. After that, after Cade, who else is going to be the guy? Jalen Duren had an all-star season, and he might be in consideration for all-NBA team. He might be a third-teamer. He had a really tremendous season. But I think in the game one, he took was it 3 shots? 3 shots? I got to double-check that. I'm gonna look up right now. But I think he took like 3 shots in that game. That just can't happen. Asar didn't play in the fourth. Things like that just – and that's going to be the biggest thing for Detroit. Obviously, they overachieved a lot this year. I think we all thought after last season, their series versus the Knicks were, if they had another guy after Cade, they might have won that series. But who's going to be the other guy? They have a lot of good pieces. Duncan Robinson's a solid piece. Tobias Harris, solid piece. Obviously Duren, he took 4 shots, by the way. He was 3 of 4. Just can't happen. Some solid people. Obviously they drafted Ron Holland a few years back, and, he's kind of been, he was a questionable pick when they happened. I wasn't crazy about that with him, and he's kind of been up and down. You thought maybe more from Dennis Jenkins, who had times this year look like, especially when Cade was hurt, Dennis Jenkins was hooping, and he was 1 of 7, 1 of 8 from the field. And so Kevin Huerter, 3. So they have a lot of good pieces, but it's like, all right, who's going to be that second guy? And that's going to be their issue, because as great as Cade is, we all know he can't do it all by himself. He needs other complementary pieces. And, he took 27 shots, and the next, Tobias took 15. This is the second on the team in field goal attempts, and he was 1 of 7 from 3. If this happens consistently, listen, I think they should beat Detroit. Now, Orlando has disappointed all year, right? They've disappointed all year. The fact they're going to play in, after trading for Desmond Bane for all them picks and having 2 all-star level players, and then all-NBA level player in Paolo, and a bunch of good young pieces. We thought Orlando should be where Detroit is, or maybe at least a 50-win team, a top 3 to 4 seed. They should have been that at worst. They wound up being a play-in team, being an 8 seed, and now, yes, they're not a typical 8 seed, but Detroit has shown that they should, this should be a series where they should win it. But now it gets interesting. It's interesting. And listen, we've seen plenty of times game ones, we see upsets happen, and then the team who's favored takes care of business. But I still think Detroit is going to win the series, but it's going to be tough. Because remember, I know Paolo has – listen, I've criticized Paolo, especially this year. I'm a Duke fan. I'm always going to root for my Duke. Yeah, I even root for Jason Tatum, and he plays for the Ops. Same thing. If you're, I always root for my Duke guys. Like I love rooting for my Duke guys in the NBA. I love seeing them have success because that helps out my Duke Blue. Because college kids want to go to schools where they know they can be pros at the end. So I've been critical because 2 years ago, I think everyone thought this guy could be an MVP. That's how good he is. He's that good. He's an MVP caliber player. Last year dealt with injuries, and then this year was just dealt with some injuries too, but just a lot of ups and downs. And you're like, okay, is he regressing? And it really did feel like, and it was. He was regressing. And then you see what he did in the play-in versus Charlotte to get the 8 seed, and then you saw what he did in Game 1 against Detroit, and you're just like, that's the Paolo Banchero people want to see. Efficient, taking care of his things on the boards, had I think 9 rebounds, 10 rebounds, and being the engine, because Orlando goes as far as Paolo can take them. Yes, Bane is important, Franz is important, Jalen Suggs is important. It's all predicated on Paolo Banchero. He is their star player. He was the number 1 pick, obviously, a couple of years back. That is their max player. He needs to be the star that we all know he can be. That old NBA player we know he can be. And if he keeps playing like that, they have a chance in this series. They have a chance in this series. If they make Cade have to do absolutely everything, they have a chance. So, and it's not, they can continue this, Orlando. They can continue. I don't think this is just a 1-game fluke, where a team just, they just had the number. Orlando could win this series. They really can. Because they look about it, their starting 5 is one of the better starting 5s in the league. It really is. It's a really solid starting 5. They may not have a traditional point guard, and that kind of was my thing. When they made the Bane trade, it's like, okay, you add another guy. Yeah, he could handle the ball a little bit, but they still don't have a point guard that can play make. And I don't think Suggs is dynamic enough. He's not like an SGA level type or Brunson or that type of point guard where he can dominate offensively. That you're not really too much worried about the playmaking aspect. And you thought, and you're still waiting to. I know Anthony Black this is probably his best season of his career, but we're still waiting for Anthony Black to take that next step. People thought this is a Penny Hardaway-esque. Because he's 6'7", 6'8". So, you're still waiting for him to emerge as that playmaker that they really need. But they took care of business in Game 1. We'll see. You'll see how they do. Because I think you'll take that. You'll take Cade getting 39 points every time if it means nobody else on that team does anything. Asar was, as great as Asar is defensively, he's a liability offensively. They don't have anyone else that can create their own shot. And you can win a lot of games the way the Detroit Pistons have played. You can win a lot of regular season games. You can win 60 games like they did. But in the playoffs, you need a couple guys who can create. You need that. And that's going to be tough for them. I still think they win the series. But it was going to be hella tough for them to win a championship, because now expectations change from, last year obviously being, they were a 6 seed last year or 7 seed to being, the number 1 seed this year. Expectations change now. If you're the number 1 seed in any conference, your expectations I don't care what they were the year before, your expectations now are for championships, is winning a championship. I don't know if Detroit's there yet. And You thought they would be a team that would be aggressive at the deadline to make a major move, and they sit put and they stayed put. I understand the strategy because I think they want to see how this team can work together, and before they make a move. Now, maybe they're like, okay, the move we want to make, we can't really do right now. We got to wait because obviously there's a potential big fish that could be available, and there's going to be a lot of teams fighting to try to get that fish, especially if Detroit and New York, falls short of expectations. But, not ideal how to play the game one. Wendell Carter looked like the all-star, all-NBA guy over Jalen Duren. That just can't be the case. You cannot get that. I mean, listen, Wendell, I love Wendell, Duke guy. You're Jalen Duren. You can't not let that happen. You are the better player. You are an all-star. You are a potential all-NBA player. You need to be better. You need to be better. You've got to dominate. So if you don't do that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You're going to be in a lot of trouble. So need the bench to be better. Cade's going to be Cade. But that might be the recipe. Hey, let Cade do whatever he wants. Because there was a lot of possessions where Cade should have had over 10 assists, but guys just missing shots. So you'll take that for Orlando. That same philosophy, and man, if they steal a game in 2 games in Detroit, that's why game one, I think game one is important. Because then there's the pressure escalates if you're a Detroit team, and you got to see how they handle it. They don't have a lot of playoff, games together. I know Duncan's obviously played an NBA finals, and Tobias Harris played a lot of playoff games. But, Cade hasn't played a lot of playoff games. Duren hasn't played a lot of playoff games. Asar hasn't played a lot of playoff games. A lot of their big pieces haven't played a lot of playoff games. So you got to see how they handle that adversity. Because that's the thing with young players, how they handle adversity. We know they can hoop. They know they can play. But how can they handle the adversity? Because it's a little tighter. It's one thing to lose in January, versus, the Knicks. But it's another thing to drop game one as a number 1 seed versus 8 seed, but Orlando's playing in, and they got a lot of momentum right now, even though it's just 1 game momentum, but, winning up the playing, gave that and dominating the way they did against a Charlotte team that was red hot, so Orlando's running momentum, and they got nothing right now. They got nothing to lose, their coach might get fired, there's a lot of, there's a lot of turmoil and, with Orlando this season, but that can all change if they upset. So we'll see how that goes. Game 2 is, I think game 2 is tomorrow, I believe, right? Game 2 is tomorrow. Let me double check. Game 2 is tomorrow, Wednesday. Tonight we got Boston, Philly. I think Boston's going to take care of that series. I don't think Boston's going to, struggle much. I just think the Philly is just no Embiid. Paul George just isn't Paul George anymore, but so I think Boston's going to take care of that, and I think Boston's the favorite in the Eastern Conference. I think they're the favorites, which is crazy to think because no one thought that they would be that much of a factor. I still thought they were going to be a good team, and I've said on shows before, I thought they would be a good team. I just didn't know, obviously, no Tatum, and I didn't think he would come back. I think what his recovery needs to be studied because I just thought that was a wrap. I thought, no, there's no chance. And I think, next year they'll be back to being the Celtics and being favorites. But this year that, Tatum, a great recovery and he's back and he's Jason Tatum and, Jaylen Brown leveled up, where he's, arguably a first team all NBA and definitely at least second team at worst, so they're going to win that series in 4 or 5. San Antonio versus Portland. Portland tremendous season. I thought they'd be a sleeper team for the play-in, at least a play-in. If with Scoot, I thought playing tremendous basketball at the end of the season last year. He got hurt, so I was kind of skeptical about that. But they just were solid. Drew Holiday had a really good season. Donovan Clingan, he's another guy might be all defensive team. One of the best offensive rebounders and the shot blockers in the league. But So they overachieved. Denny Avdija obviously was an all-star this year, tremendous. Another guy might be all NBA, at least third team maybe. But San Antonio is just too much. Wemby, it's just gonna dominate. So I really don't think that series is gonna go far. I think that could be a sweep potentially too. Lakers Rockets is just the one where everything's predicated on that knee of Durant, because if he's not healthy, and just the what we've seen from the point guard position, the lack of playmaking, and that's a series. Now obviously the Lakers are down too, with no Austin Reeves and no Luka. Obviously, we might see Luka at the end of the series, but honestly, I hold them off until unless you're down in the series and you need that dub. But they should. This is probably going to go 6 or 7. Despite the injuries, on both sides. Is Durant out? Is he out for this game? I gotta look up quick. Let's look up if Durant is out. If he's out, obviously I think that's gonna be too tough for the Rockets. I think it's a game time decision. So it's just another that's tough. And LeBron's doing what he's doing. It was a weird game too. I think Rockets shot more threes, and it just was this. I don't know. This is a weird series to even figure out, even with both, if they were both healthy. But now that Lakers are down their two of their best players, and the Rockets are down their best player, it's really hard to figure out. But the Lakers have LeBron James, and the Rockets don't. And especially if there's no KD, the Lakers, despite some of their deficiencies offensively, they should take care of business. So that's another series where it's hard to kind of figure out because it's just odd. It's just really tough to figure out. Luke Kennard goes absolutely nuts, in game one. You let him dominate you if you're the Rockets, especially when you have, some good, solid perimeter defenders. You let him just go off. I don't expect that to happen again, but, he shot, 5 of 5 from 3, in 27 minutes. You just can't let that happen if you're the Rockets. You can't let him. It's just like with the Detroit, because essentially LeBron's playing with a Detroit level team, with no Luka and no Austin Reeves. All 5 starters had over 14 points. Luke led the team in score with 27. LeBron had a damn near triple-double. Efficient, 9 and 15. But you could live with LeBron doing that, right? But you let Rui go, 6 to 10 for 14. You let DeAndre Jordan get 19, only missed 2 shots. He had a double. Marcus Smart, had 15 points. You can't do that. Reed Shepard was Reed shot 20 times and 6 to 20. That's not going to get it done. This is not going to get it done. So, think about it. Your 3 best scorers. So your top 4 scorers, your top 4 players without KD combined for 20 made 24 field goals on, let me try to do the math quick. 24 field goals on 38, 52, on 71 shots? Well, that's nasty. My math might be wrong there, but I'm trying to do it off the top of my dome, but that's not good. That's not good. That's not going to get done. That's not going to get done. They shot significantly more shots. They shot 93, almost 30 more shots they took. Almost 30 more shots they took than the Los Angeles Lakers, and they lost by 9 points. So the philosophy that, you're looking for more shot attempts because eventually, if you hit, even if you take as many as they took, you're thinking, if we hit enough threes that, enough will go in that we'll take care of business. But that wasn't the case. They shot the ball. Oh my God. They, Lakers only took 19 threes. The Rockets shoot 34, I think. Yeah, if they do that again, the Lakers are going to take care of business. So, just other thoughts on the playoffs. Like I said, it's going to be a Thunder are going to take care of business versus Suns. I'm not really that's going to be done. I think Spurs. I'm still going to go. I got my picks originally, and I'm not going to waver off my picks based off of game 1 losses or game 2 splits. I still think the Suns. I think we all think the Suns have no chance against the Thunder. I think the Thunder are going to breeze through that series. I had the Lakers winning. I still think they're gonna win that series even without Luka. I had the Timberwolves winning against the Nuggets, even though I thought the Nuggets before the season were going to go to the conference finals. I think Ant-Man is going to carry the Timberwolves. Spurs, I had the Spurs winning that series. Pistons, I'm still going to rock with the Pistons. I still think the Pistons are going to beat the Magic. Cavs, I had them. That was easy. The Knicks, still think the Knicks are going to win the series despite the heartbreak of Game 2 and the Celtics. So I'm going to stay with my picks. Those were my picks. I'm going to still stay with that. I'm not going to waver. Just 2 games. But that's going to recap this episode of the Off the Ball podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to for this pod. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. We're almost at 700 followers. Please, appreciate you. Would love and appreciate a subscribe. That would mean a lot. We get on the road to 700, and then we can get off to the road to 800 and 900, and then get that, monumental 1,000 followers. So I appreciate everyone who subscribed. And playoffs are we got a couple good games today. Hopefully they're close because these potentially could be blowouts. At least 2 of them could be blowouts, but I hope we get some good games. Boston, Philly, San Antonio, Portland, Lakers, Rockets. Hopefully KD plays in the latter of those games. That is, KD versus Braun is always something to be looking forward to, especially that we're getting towards the end of that. This could be it. This could be the last time we could see these 2 playing each other in the playoffs. So on that note, everyone be well, be safe, take care. Peace out, guys. Deuces.
Start spreading the news.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.